Welcome back. Alright, so we have one more side thing to do. Rather two.
Get to see Fret's mom.
Or rather two more side things. Sorry, Dwebs, no. Fret's
remember, besides, this is the reality where she's not even that important.
Yeah, remember.
Of course he's important. Fret's mom did a great job raising her son. Isn't that right, Fret?
Well, I guess in the wise words of Tommy Talarico, his mother must be very proud.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like my parents. Well, my mom. I haven't seen my dad in like 10 years.
Alright, this is me.
Trying again to see if you find
I'm talking as Rindo, by the way, not my.
Yeah.
Sure.
To see if I recall correctly, it's one of these.
Let's see. Nope.
Oh, okay. I don't remember.
Sorry, guys, but
maybe
until we find a dish that Neku doesn't like, none of this.
Screw it. Sorry, go on. Let's see if Tatsuya Kando will help us.
Because I seem to remember.
There it is. We found it.
There we are. Ha! We found it. We found the dish you don't like.
Poor Neku.
And ironically, it's at the restaurant from the first game. Although maybe Neku just doesn't like that they changed from ramen to curry.
Pretty much.
Alright, let's go with that then.
It's just not the same anymore.
Eat your rice curry, Neku.
What happened to you? You used to be cool.
Come back soon.
Okay.
I don't think I will, no.
Alright, so let's see what's going on with Rhyme. There's some seriously strong noise up.
Yeah, boy.
Click.
So basically, this is the hardest save a person possessed by the noise section of the game. Oh, my head.
Rhyme! Rhyme, what's wrong? Talk to me, yo!
Huh? Who are you? Oh, my head.
It feels like it's gonna be eaten by a shark. Rhyme! We gotta help her. She's gone all weird. Somebody do something! Nagi!
Say no more.
I like how they're so used to this in this realm that they know to turn to Nagi for this.
I will settle this matter with utmost haste.
Which implies that this happens frequently here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know. I know this isn't. I know it's not supposed to be a running gag of Brian getting eaten by a shark, but honestly, for the first game, that's all I remember it for.
Well,
It's a very iconic moment.
Well, in here she's the hacker that comes up with the planet saves everybody. So in here she has a more proper role. There you go.
I mean, I'm glad she does more in this game because she didn't leave that much of an impression in the first one. That'd be like if.
Well, you can tell that the primary idea, one of the primary ideas, was to have a major character be killed to properly set up the stakes. That just because you're a main character, you're not necessarily safe from death for the sake of because it's a very common thing in writing where there's at least writers will take one major character and kill that character for the sake of setting up a proper stakes that this is not just because they're a minor character doesn't necessarily mean they have plot armor, basically.
It'd be like if
and to give him credit, I feel like
go on.
To give him credit, I feel like Rhyme got to do more than just die. I feel like she was enough of a developed enough character that, when she did die, it didn't feel like we were getting stiffed on, a secret character arc of hers or anything. It felt like she served the narrative purpose well, without feeling like she was only made just to die.
Remember, it's all...
Like if in the first Ace Attorney game, I only remembered Mia for being that character that got whacked in the head by a Bruce Forsyth statue.
Well, I'm gonna do a good job developing her in that first case. Enough. Although playing it with Ace Attorney 3 hindsight definitely helps, I will admit. But Again, remember, it's also majorly for the sake of the impact her death not only has on Beat, but also on Neku and Shiki, right? Because Neku and Shiki, after that, because they're so, they're very distraught by it, because this is their reality setting in moment that no one's safe, and they even argue a bit more because they're completely distraught and are not thinking clearly. So there's a very specific purpose for it narrative-wise. It's not just shock value, to be fair, and it helps. And not to mention, it gives Beat a major motivation. Forgot the entirety of the game for his actions. So
I fucking hate that spiky head kid.
there you go.
Fret, why is he Fret?
Whereas in here,
Did you say that just said?
whereas in this game, Fuya, the leader of the Deep River Society, is the one that's mostly used for the purpose of setting up the people die in this game stakes.
Wait. Get what?
I don't know, Beat.
So is this?
Oh god, I hate it when my sister talks in riddles, yo. First her
So
computer tech speak, and now this.
Yes, Joe.
So is this set of enemies supposed to be the fill-in for some of the bosses we missed in the other boss rush?
I noticed the rhino. I don't remember if that became a recurring enemy or not.
It did. Yes.
I'm wondering if maybe we'll see the T-Rex and the elephant here instead.
Well, let's see. Oh, there we are.
Weird. The elephant was red originally, though.
Well,
Remember, these are called.
Wait, what?
remember, Joe, in JRPG logic, reskin means buffed up, a harder version.
You have to remember, Jova, the dive into hard thing has phases that reflect the emotional state of a character, and the noises are colored with that, in mind.
That is true, seeing as how most of these boss noises we fought outside of the mind, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, sis, what do you mean you're a spy?
It's that black bird again.
There's the scorpion noises. Wait, Blackbird.
You said that 2 minutes ago, yo.
Okay, that implies that some of the birds from the main story are leaking into this world.
Remember, Joe, it's another day. Don't think about it too hard.
Well, Pedro, with all due respect, in the original game, the mainline story literally did leak into
Oh yeah,
another
that is
day.
true. That is true.
And the vanilla ending seems to imply that the show is the one from the base game that somehow got here.
We'll see too. We'll see after this. Huh? I can fly.
Okay,
No,
right.
don't go into the light!
Lay off the heroin. It's not really helping.
Seriously, first Coco, now Rhyme? What is it with these girls and the weed?
Maybe this rhyme has been around with. Am I a noise? Maybe this rhyme has been. Doesn't keep herself very good company, it seems.
Also, wait, am I a noise? Oh god, that's a reference to the first game where she kind of did get turned into a noise.
And
Yeah.
considering your noise was kind of like a flying squirrel, maybe that's what the whole "am I flying" is referring to.
Probably.
Interesting. This implies she's synchronizing with her original self.
Okay, the secret report did mention that in order to fill in the gaps, alternate universe versions are put in to fill in the gaps where people are trapped in the game.
I've got to step out of it. Not much of a bird brain.
Here's the
There's
T-Rex.
the T-Rex. Huh.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's it, Joe. But they saved those for this one.
Basically 2 boss rushes.
Well, yeah. Remember, ridding people of the noise is always a boss rush, regardless. It's just that this one is the biggest one yet because we're in post-game territory. So
This is more
obviously.
treated like a horde mode more than a boss rush.
Yeah, true.
This one, you typically the post game. Usually by this point, you should be powerful enough. The final side quest of the main campaign, that's the one that's typically the hardest for me because at that point you still don't have all the 6 Gatonero pins. So, all right, and that's it.
Yeah, nice.
My head's killing me. Looks like this is in the dream at least, huh? Was that all a dream?
Wait, so 2 whacked out dreams. Something's up here.
Huh? Pete! Rob, how you feeling? You hurt anywhere? I'm fine. Nothing to worry about.
Uh-huh.
But,
Right.
but what happened? There was this black thing that attacked me. And then...
Choose your next words carefully, girl.
Who cares? You're alright. That's all I need to know.
Some manner of malevolent force must have possessed her, but what could it be?
You know what? That's cool and all, but what about the concert? We have to get to the concert, though.
I love again that apparently this stuff is common enough that she's not even phased by that.
I get that I get that Rem was possessed by noise, but Death March is playing, guys. We have to go see. Go ahead, Jova.
Some kind of black thing.
Rin dude, if we don't hurry, Shibuya is gonna stop without us. Yeah, that's the #1 priority here, obviously. So,
You're right. We gotta get our tickets.
It's scattered all the way out here.
yeah. So basically, as you just guessed, Jova, yes, the Blackbirds moved them all the way here, apparently.
These numbers are all over the place.
Alright, we have one more side thing that we need to do in order to unlock the secret ending.
Now, caught correctly, though, we've covered all the bosses for boss rushes, so what could be left to fight?
You'll see. Let's just say this particular next bit is gonna be Shiroi's worst nightmare.
It's show
Why?
focused, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, to be fair, if we applied the logic when he said at the beginning, when he was joining the team in this version, he did mention something about you have to beat me to get to it or something.
Oh my god, that's what I think it is.
well, hold on. Let's see what it is, Dwarfs.
Is it the pink-haired girl's character getting killed?
No,
I don't think so.
we're saving her. Remember, Dwarfs, we're saving her in case we make a third game that we can do our sitcom. She's a fairy princess who's actually secretly a cow, and he's the math man. What wacky hijinks can they get into?
It would be kind of insane if they literally murder Coco and yet still are like, but guys, we gotta go to the
And-
concert afterwards.
Oh, look who it is!
In front of a police station.
And
Very below.
get this.
But you were with us.
And get this. There's two of them. There's 2 of them now.
Finally, my own alternate universe version. Now none of us will be
no.
virgins anymore.
Huh?
You know what? This city does need to be destroyed. Let's get to it.
True Minamimotos?
That's a bad thing.
I'm in hell.
What's better than 1 show, 2 shows?
No!
You're in hell, Tio's in heaven. It
terrible.
all balances out perfectly. What? How?
I don't know how.
What's
but-
going on?
I finally found you, faker.
Fake-haired.
Never thought you'd be the one to force our lines to intersect.
So there you go.
God.
So there you go. The show from this world with the show from the main story's world. There you go.
But we're collinear. We've always been on the same
So this is
side.
this against the equivalent of both Joshua's meeting in the first game, basically. Top right.
The 2 are one and the same.
You see, guys, show is the one constant.
And as you can see, show does not really change from world to world.
Now he's still
I mean-
a twat.
I mean, hey, we even saw that in the original Another Day. Even as the heroic Dr. Pin, he was still show at the heart.
I mean, for all you actually lover of Misa's trope,
I didn't know.
what you like, but,
I didn't know Mr. Minami had a twin. Call back to the
God
first.
fucking that! Someone slapped him on the back of his head. Maybe the circulation will get back to his brain.
No, let's go ahead.
I know, it's a joke.
Top right.
Oh. What's up with the matching outfits? It's too weird.
The twin remark is a callback to Beat's remark from the first games another day when the two Joshua's
I know,
meet.
I was just joking.
Yes.
How could this be?
Seems like it.
Your harmonic progression stops here. Crunch!
Hey, Zeptograms.
Listen up, Zetograms.
My name's Rindo.
This guy's a non-trivial opponent.
Meaning...
Think you can handle it?
Meaning he's the hardest boss in the game, Jova.
I get the feeling we don't have a choice.
Then they start
Of
pointing at
course.
each other, and Reno is like, but who is the real one? Well, let's get this experiment started.
Oh, I never agree.
Let me guess, it turns out that this show is actually the culprit of what's
You know,
been
we just need a
afflicting
third
you.
show so we can recreate the Spider-Man pointing at each other meme.
Yes.
Keep it together.
So, okay,
Technically,
you know how the in-battle lines are always voiced? This particular boss battle has a exclusive voiced line from Rindo that you can hear anywhere else.
Oh, because I thought you were going to say for a second, oh, the lines here are in Japanese. You didn't bother dubbing them.
Alright, so this boss is incredibly difficult because he has a new gimmick compared to the other version of this boss. He has a new gimmick mechanic that Brenda will... There you go.
What's up with those eyes? Be careful. Something's not right.
Basically, if those eyes get you, you won't be able to damage him. Basically, this it's a new mechanic that they added specifically for the super version of this boss. Basically,
And you still have to chip away the armor too.
yeah. So
you know, what do
Because
what do people see when they're passing by a bunch of kids basically ganging up on that poor boy show?
In front of a police station!
Yes.
no, Joe.
We're gonna
No,
beat
Tail.
you.
Remember, we established in the first game's reports that battles take place in an alternate plane.
Right.
But
I'll say it.
but Pedro, this is another day, another world. So again, keep in mind, apparently everybody here has superpowers. So maybe these fights legit happen in broad daylight to everyone. So again,
That's
in
also
front
a-
of a police station,
That-
we're beating up this guy. gang-
That's
Yes,
also a possibility. Go on, Dibs.
Because as inconsistent as it is, I've always found it funny whenever say a localization into English misses a spot per se, and we end up having a sound clip all of a sudden switch to the Japanese voice, especially when the two voices, English to Japanese, are completely different in terms of pitch.
Well, in here, there's not really any case of that. So.
I've never really had that issue in any of their games, to my knowledge.
And that's it.
I mean, damn it, it's a C, that's a passing grade.
I could do this at infinitum.
Yeah, I could do this all day.
I could do this all day. Yeah.
I'd really rather not.
I don't recall
Thank you.
asking. The math is done. I showed my work. QED.
Well done.
Great, you
Consider ourselves
graduated. I'll
unbounded.
leave.
A bush.
He's gone.
God, he's so cool.
And he's off.
I miss him already, bros.
What a strange person.
I can tell that. I can tell.
Brando,
can-
you're not in a Studio Ghibli movie.
No, too. I can tell that line is a direct translation of the Japanese line because that's clear. That's exactly how a Japanese person would phrase it. What a strange part. That's something that Japanese people say all the time. So I can tell that
I
that
know,
line.
but it's like the what happens in. I still have a non-zero T value. And it's like what happens in Studio Ghibli movies. Like, oh, that was weird.
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe I'll go check out this show.
Oh,
and this is
so-
what. There you go.
oh,
Now
so
show.
you're not too cool for the costume.
So there you go. Now show will go see Death March. Now that he's done with his work. All right. So let's skip to that.
I'm wondering if this is supposed to be hyping
Go ahead,
up
too.
something for the sequel.
Finally took out the garbage.
Your good deed for the day?
Yes.
I'm back to my
there's that
true
Nintendo
value.
DS sound.
Took me long enough. I was a fraction of a femtometer away from getting reduced to 0. But I made it, and I ran all the numbers.
And my numbers tell me to expect a third game in about 10 years.
Shibuya's full of surprises.
Admit it, Joe, you like Shibuya too.
Oh, he
I mean, if
does.
his goal is to ultimately ascend, he kind of will probably need to like his job.
Yeah.
A soul that grows in power even after he gets erased.
Oh, this is when he found out the truth behind it.
You bet your box plot I wanted that.
Okay, so this is kind of similar.
I'm coming for you, composer.
Of course.
Again? Oh my god, dude.
Again, I look forward the day show actually becomes God. Crunch!
Why is he the last thing we see at the end of the game?
Going to have the last word here.
Like it or not, he is a fan favorite character. Anyway,
He's basically the shadow of the series, it seems.
The people don't know what they want.
right.
Okay. So I think I get what's going on now. Similar to the original Another Day, this was also happening alongside the main story. Like, this is where Sho, I'm guessing, found out the truth behind the birds, basically. So this will lead up right to the time when he's going to show up again for the heroes in the main story.
Yeah, the correlation between the two worlds is not as obvious as it was in the first game, but Jova's theory makes sense. All right, that's it, everybody. We're done. Dwebs, final thoughts.
Well, I enjoyed the story of this more than I did the last game. And I did enjoy the last game story as well, even though I did have some misgivings about how it was executed. I think they did a good job translating the art style to 3D because, Evan knows we've seen in the past examples of 2D to 3D transitions done badly. Like Earthworm Jim, for example.
God, I keep
Yeah,
forgetting that even got a 3D game.
Yeah, I thought I'd say that instead of Bobsy because that's too obvious. I do enjoy the new music in this game, although in terms of remixes from the first game, I kind of wish they used the newer mixes of them as opposed to just taking them from the DS game. Especially when you compare sound quality to the new tracks. It still sounds, I can tell, it's got that DS crunch, for lack of a better term.
I think they did the best thing just including them all alongside the newer versions so that, if you're one who prefers the DS version, it's there. If you prefer the newer version, it's also there.
They did release a soundtrack with cleaner versions. I'm surprised they didn't just use those. And B, I'll be honest, I do kind of prefer the ones from that to these. I'm not saying these are bad, I just prefer those other ones.
Who's your favorite character?
Bit of a tough one. I'd say Rendo.
All right.
I'm kind of glad that they grew out of some of those tropes that they used in the first game that I think they're pretty tired even by 2007, never mind 2021.
Sure. Would you be interested in a third game if Square, by some reason, allows it to happen? Because the developers want to make it. I can assure you, if you ask them, they would say yes.
Because, it's oftentimes a pitfall of sequels is that they do it just for the sake of it. But I'm guessing that's not the case this time.
Oh, no. But remember, Nomura and his team had to fight for the right to make this game. Remember, so if they're making one, it's because they want to, not because they're told to. Because Square would rather than not make it to begin with. So,
to be fair, I know. To be fair to the corporation, Kingdom Hearts 4 is one of their big projects. So I can see why, for now, they want that particular team to focus on that.
I think there's a potential other reason why the whole marketing thing happened, but that's just speculation and it will take too long. So for now, Dave, you have to trust me on that.
for the record, I don't want them to stop making Kingdom Hearts. It would be nice for them to be allowed to alternate between the two IPs. A Kingdom Hearts game, a Toei game. A Kingdom Hearts game, that would be a good balance, in my opinion.
Plus, for Toei, they don't have to worry about two overlords at the same time. Oh yeah, the voice work again. There's a lot more of it here because compared to a DS game.
Yeah, that's a good question. What do you think of the voice acting?
I thought it was pretty solid overall, and I was interested to see how the returning actors from the last game, considering that all they did last time, aside from that little monologue from Neku at the end, they only had like little voice clips to do, whereas they only have to talk in full sentences. And I thought they handled it all right, especially considering that they hadn't come back to these characters since 2008 in terms of the localization.
Yeah. Well, remember that actually, that's Kingdom Hearts 3D. They did reprise their roles in 2012.
Remember, some characters went in that game, I don't think.
No, but all the main ones were Neku, Shiki, Joshua, Beat, and Rhyme. So all of them got to reprise their roles.
When was that last? 2011?
2012. It still means that they got to reprise their roles in that game, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it was still a big gap, though, 9 years. And I'm not sure when the voice recording was done, because, I mean, imagine doing a role you haven't done in 9 years, and this during a pandemic. That issue kind of played the dub of Persona 5 Strikers, I think it was called around here. Because I think one or two of them definitely had that vibe of, I'm recording this in my closet. Whereas this game doesn't really have that issue, and I think that's about it. I wouldn't mind seeing another game in this series. I mean, who knows? With the much more powerful technology that we have now, especially given that those who have played this game on Nintendo had to make do with the underpowered Switch compared to the PS4. I'll be interested to see how that would go on the Switch 2/PS5.
That's what they did.
Yes.
They made the game for the Switch, and the Switch version runs at 60 FPS, unlike most Switch ports, because the game was made for the Switch first, and the PS4 and PC ports are ports made after the Switch version, and they do run better. The PS4 and especially on the PS5 runs better, follows 60 FPS. That being said, the Switch version is perfectly playable with no real the frame rate is not as consistent as the other versions, but again, it's not something that's really worth.
I haven't heard any horror. I haven't heard any horror stories about the Switch version.
No, that's because there aren't any.
That's about it. Solid game overall, and I look forward to, if not another sequel, at least what this team do.
That's the thing. That if Square has their way, they'll only make Kingdom Hearts and nothing else. That's the thing.
Are we absolutely certain Square absolutely hate this franchise to that level?
Was actually was about to get, but again, just to be sure, Dweebs, you're done.
Yes. Well, Joe, if they don't hate it, they sure make it look like they do, though.
Well, like I was about to say, it's not even for my final thoughts, but I do believe that there might be a theoretical reason this has happened.
Sure.
At least what I found at the end. I want to preface this, however, by mentioning that, first of all, there is no concrete proof of anything of what I'm about to say. It's merely just speculation that, the fans actually apparently did. I bothered to actually ask a few of them in different servers just to be sure it wasn't just, a bunch of trolls wanting to do their own thing. And I want to stress out, despite the fact that it involves a person in particular, that doesn't mean that I particularly share the feelings towards a person. I can believe what I'm about to describe happened, but that doesn't mean that I share the same sentiment of the event that happened. So, do you remember the fact that a couple of people in the game are facially modeled after some Square Enix employee, like Kando, the ramen stand owner, or Shinji Hashimoto for another day? General speculation is that Kubo might be also based on someone, specifically Hajime Tabata, as part of the Tetsuya Nomura's and the Kingdom team's usual grudge that they had based on what happened to Versus 13. Now, again, I want to stress out, that doesn't mean that I actually have to agree with them, But here's what might actually corroborate this. First of all, apparently, according to development interviews, Kubo was originally not even supposed to be in the final game, but it was a specific request from Nomura to insert a bad guy that was genuinely unrepenting and someone that the player could actually enjoy hating, because he realized that apparently everyone else turned out to be more sympathetic, as we also noted, like Shiba, Suzukichi, and Tsugumi, for example, or even Ayano for that matter. And we do know that apparently the game did add some level of rewriting, apparently, because apparently Tsugumi was supposed to play a bigger role, and instead we got other things. Apparently Ayano was going to be a player in canon, the Shinjuku Reaper, before they were swapped. I don't know how will that work out, but again, just hear me out on that. Supposedly, the plot parallels what happened sadly to Square Enix. Kubo, someone who's assigned to a project, let's say Type 0, does his job very well, then he gets assigned to a nearby area and starts overworking, thinking that he's doing, a good thing, jeopardizing the lives of everyone else, until the quote-unquote higher beings banish him completely, and everyone rejoices better for his banishment. Supposedly, this would have to parallel the fact of what happened with Versus 13 turning Final Fantasy 15, and the fact that Tabata left Square Enix before the final batch of DLCs could be completed, while the Luminous team was put on work on Forspoken instead. Again, we do not know the internal politics at Square Enix. We do not know if Tabata actually left in good terms. Was he fired? Did he quit? Was there any animosity or anything? I also bothered to look. Supposedly the gonk face is intentional just to avoid the no celebrities were harmed, kind of deal. The haircut does match the photos that I found of Tabata. Again, and we do know that Tetsuya Nomura, around this period of time, did have his grudge, as I explained as I explained also at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Again, want to stress out, there are no absolute proof of this. If it's just a matter of good coincidence, I'm happy for that. So, especially because, as I made clear over the past years, I don't have a problem with Tabata, nor with the games we developed. Maybe for her birthday, but I think that's more of a problem of Motomo Toriyama than anything.
I was about to say, and unless there's actual proper evidence of this, I'm going to give no more of the benefit of the doubt, because there's not really any major reason
to conclude this. That potentially could explain also the animosity that Square has towards having this sequel being released, because I do wonder if someone who was more on Tabata's wagon inside the company found out this whole thing and basically jeopardized the game's marketing as a result. There is enough for me to believe that internally at Square as a whole in general, it's not a particularly rosy environment, and there are a lot of people who do have a bit of animosity towards each other. It's not happy-go-lucky all the time. I just don't know if it's on this particular level with petty. And I would also like to just one final thing. If you do wonder, well, maybe, but why would this team do such a thing of creating a character intentionally designed after a person that they do not like? That's kind of petty. I would like to remind you that this is the same team that created in the early 2010 a caricature of Hironobu Sakaguchi, painting him as a clueless moron who could not see danger under his nose until it was too late. My point is that I don't think the Kingdom team is above this kind of behavior. It's just that, like also Pedro just mentioned, I don't have any evidence of that. So take that from what you will. Believe me, don't believe me, I don't care. Personally, I don't know what to think. If that is true, it only demonstrates that this kind of work environment is more childish when we take granted form, and I kind of wish that they would just stop doing this kind of shit and just make games on their own. But again, if it's not the case, I'm more happy for it. Next.
My personal take is it could be true, could be completely false. There is enough to suggest it, but there's nothing bulletproof to absolutely confirm it. So hopefully it's not that, but if it is that, something tells me in the future we'll get a revelation.
All right. Yeah, this is definitely a lot more refined than the first game. Still really enjoyed that. Yeah, definitely a lot of improvements here. The cast are great. Music slaps. Visually, it's fantastic. What else?
Who's your favorite character?
It might be Fret.
Hmm. You also know his mom?
I mean, she had it going.
That depends, but yeah, I have a Fret or Nagi. I think
Nice.
so. Yeah,
How about both of them? You can ship both of them like a lot of fans do.
that's true.
Do you ship? I haven't asked you this yet. Do you, like a lot of fans, do you ship those two?
Yes.
There you go. I will say this though. My pick for cutest twirly couple, Rendo and Shoka, by far. Like they're the cutest couple in this series, in my opinion.
They're just so awkward. And I mean that positively. Like,
Right.
yeah.
It's kind of like Mary Jane and Peter in Far From Home. Like they nailed the awkward teenager romance angle, basically.
Mm-hmm. But this game is way too flashy for me to actually play. But like the story is a great. Like if they did make a third game, I would be happy to look into the story at least. And the music, keep going with that. I think that's it. Really, this was a lot of fun to go through. I think. Yes, I am done.
Pedro, did we mention? I forgot when we talked about Coco. Did we mention that Hervier Kitana Turbo apparently voiced a character in one of the seasons of P Riding Free?
Wait, did she?
Apparently,
Who
a
was
character
she?
apparently called Liz in the Riding Academy series season.
Oh.
I have an answer for you too. Kitana Turnbull played the snooty rival of Lucky, you know, like the leader of the free
I mean,
snooty girls.
much like with
basically.
the other VAs, like you said, Pedro, they needed a paycheck.
Okay. For the most part, I will agree. There are a lot of improvements with this game here. I do feel like the first game's narrative was a bit tighter, and let me explain that. Now, the cast of characters here are all great, essentially. From the new protagonist Rindo to the returning protagonist Neku. Each one has very good and clean characterization. I do feel, though, that it's not as tight, narratively speaking, as the first game. First off, in the first game, well, it felt like we got every boss fight we ought to, essentially. What I mean by that is, as me and Tio kind of complained about in this game, there were some boss fights that we never got. Like, we didn't get a fight against Cannon on point properly, sadly, even though it seemed like the game was building up to that. We never get to fight Kubo. Yeah, I get it. He's an angel, but the writers could have made it that we could have fought him. And again, it is kind of weird that Sho never really returns to being playable for like the final section when it feels like this should be the moment where everyone comes together. It's not me to say that it makes the story bad, but it feels like the story misses out on some cue points that are clearly there. Maybe due to developmental stuff or whatnot, but again, it feels oddly missing. Also, in regards to this Another Day sequence, we don't see everyone from the main story. Like, we don't see Azuki and Karia, like... And I get it, maybe they're focusing mostly on the newer cast, but it feels weird to have some of those omissions when the original game pretty much felt like it got all that stuff covered. Which, you know, again, that's just the one step down, I feel like, from the original. Otherwise, though, the production values have been bumped up very nicely. Unlike Dwibs, I'm glad, actually, that they kept some of the old music, too. Again, while giving us new versions, so honestly, I feel like everyone wins here. Well, I feel like the writing isn't as tight as the first game, essentially. Like, already mentioned that. It still is a very good and entertaining story overall. Like, you're definitely getting your money's worth with this one here and there.
What's your favorite music track?
That is once again a tough one.
Okay, fine. Easier question. Who's your favorite character?
Neku. I mean, you know, Neku is nice and chill, and it's nice to see this as an extension of his character development where he has truly reached the zen of being okay with being killed multiple times by these people. But hey, it's okay because his boyfriend, Jesus, kept him as alive as you can be while being dead. Yeah, no, he's great. And hey, Shiba once again continues the tradition of the conductors secretly being the goats, essentially. Good on him.
Mhm.
Although, I will say this, another story issue I do have is, yes, it's nice to see that he starts to have regrets, but I do feel it was a missed opportunity to not get to see more of that stuff, seeing as how it's kind of just shown at the very tail end of the game, essentially. Again, it's nothing that ruins the story for me, but it feels like they could have just given that extra push and whatnot and showing, how he would come to terms with what he had done, given how, yeah, Ayano and Sister Kichi are flipping dead, technically, thanks to you. Now, yeah, that was mainly Kubo who ruined everything, but still, it would be nice to see more Shiba having to reflect on this stuff. Who knows? Maybe in a third game we'll get to see him do more of that atoning.
Difference between the two of them is that Megumi still did what he did knowingly, the whole thing with the pins that he did in the first game. Whereas Shiba, like we established in the reports, literally got his brain altered by Kubo's influence, as Mr. H explained. And that's the sad part, the fact that they completely got his brain changed.
This is probably why most of the Shinjuku Reapers don't hold it too much against him, and why Shoka was even okay with talking about to him after he kind of caused Ayano's death. But yes, no, it is at least understandable in that regard.
And remember, the characters say throughout the entire game, it's weird. He didn't used to be like this. Why? And the change was so sudden, they say. So the game builds up to this revelation throughout the entirety of it by having the Shinjuku Reapers constantly question why is he acting like this.
And I'll give him credit, I dig that they did not kill him off. It would have been so easy to have him die and have that be his atonement. No, he actually does have to live with that stuff, basically. Which is an interesting inverse of what happened in the first game. Megumi died, a hero trademark, trying to save it, and pretty much left the last bits up to Neku. Whereas a lot of his underlings actually survived. Oh, sure, yeah, the big guy and his lackey woman, they died, but they kind of had that one more so coming. Meanwhile, Sho, Uzuki, and Kariya all survived, basically, so yeah. Interesting enough stuff. Again, I will say this story also does raise more inclinations that Joshua's decision to wipe out Shibuya might not have been completely his own, since it sounds like that was kind of what more the system wanted. Again, a bit of hinting there. I'm a bit annoyed we didn't look more into that one, but that one I'm more okay with, since that's more a hinting more than anything. Again, maybe saving that for a future game, or just something to give the player to think about.
If that
That's not
as much
drama.
it might be possible that even the team doesn't know entirely, because according also to that rewriting mentioned that was mentioned before, originally Haz was supposed to be the final boss instead of the Phoenix. So I do wonder if the originally was supposed to be more bleak and with the actual defeat of a composer.
It would not surprise me if they don't know where they're going just yet, since this is people coming from the Kingdom team after all. Love the Kingdom Hearts series, but that was definitely not as planned out as they want you to think it was. But I digress though. Again, while I have some misgivings about the sequel, it is still a phenomenal sequel. If you're a fan of the series, check it out. Heck, even if you aren't a fan of the series, get these games. They are fantastic. And you know what? I'm gonna hold out hope for a sequel in the future. Tio, let's hear your thoughts.
Okay. Taking it into a vacuum, this game is perfectly fine to actually be played, even technically as a sequel to the first game. But I do argue you can definitely notice once finishing it that the final result that we got was not what the people in charge had in mind from the get-go. Mostly due to the rewriting. The gameplay, as far as I can understand, is definitely an improvement compared to the first game. Sometimes some of the CGI coated with the cell shade might be a bit distracting, and as much as it doesn't impact it on me as much as it would be Shiroi, I have to agree that the special effects tends to be a bit much overblown, a bit similar to what Elden Ring tends to do, except in this case, instead of pointing at the particle effects, they point instead at the bloom, which makes us a bit more lightning. like I said, the gameplay is perfectly, fine and definitely enjoyable. A bit, not as much as on the ordinary like other RPGs, because instead here you have a particular mechanic in how you level up your stats. The pin leveling is very similar to how you level up the commands in Bird by Sleep and in Kingdom Hearts 3D, so that is more familiar. But again, they try to did something different to break out the mold instead of making it, a complete clone, which might be a trapping that they might be afraid, Square Enix might be afraid of falling into in a couple of original IPs that they developed, like Octopath Traveler, for example. Now, as for the story, like I said, the final product at the end of the day still makes sense. But it's when you get down to the facets that you understand that, yeah, this was probably supposed to go in a different direction. And then between whatever happened, maybe the pandemic, maybe the internal politics, maybe because of, the publisher, harassing them or anything, things had to be changed drastically, and, we got a Savage product, which is nothing too new for Square. As a reminder, Final Fantasy VII was supposed to be very, very different before it got shipped in its final version, so we're kind of used to it as a company. It's just that you can definitely tell by presence of some character, like Tsugumi. Again, she's still prod critical, but her role in the main game clearly feels like it doesn't justify her being the hype Chan factor at the end of a previous episode.
I wonder if, like you said, she was originally supposed to have a much bigger role
Yes,
in the
she
original
was
plot.
originally.
Which,
Yes.
again, makes sense. Not that I would have want any of the existing characters to be replaced by her, because one thing that I will point out immediately is that they managed to do the impossible and make me like pretty much the entire party. I was super afraid that Fred was gonna turn out to be the annoying funny man sidekick, but they managed to make it walk the tightrope just, good enough for him to be very endearing despite everything that happened. So I actually applaud the writing team for managing to do it, because I can think at least a free Atlus game where they tried to do that and failed miserably at it. But also Nagi has a good, representation for someone introvert that has to, well, be exposed to the world. The only thing that I will mention, that I also mentioned throughout the game about the character development, is that I don't think the game does a good job in wanting to portray the message of Rindo is indecisive and needs to start taking his decision. Right at the beginning, you can definitely feel about it, like, for example, the fact that Fred comes up with the name of the team, and during week 1, mostly it's Sho that's carrying him, I get it. But starting already in week 2, you can definitely tell, at least to me, that Rindo starts to be more assertive and making a decision, while instead, up until the end of the game, some characters still try to push up, this narrative of saying, you're finally starting to make decisions on your own, and you don't seem to be very assertive on your team. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Either, the game did not a good job of portraying it, or maybe I really am not getting it. I do wonder, and this is something that I was going to talk more in depth later, but also hazarding a guess, I do wonder if in the original script, Rindo was, for lack of a better term, more whiny and more indecisive, and Meta decided to tone it down because he was afraid that the audience might have ended up not liking Rindo as a result. I don't know. But again, that's also more speculation than anything, especially because we don't have a direct comparison. Again, I managed to also like Beat despite everything. I'm still not really a big fan of the way they make him talk in the English version, but again, that's the whole consistency with the already first game. We cannot escape that, although, as I said a couple of times during the run, I do believe that would have been a good excuse for a retranslation of the first game for the Switch version, so that Beat can get a different accent that still puts him in an equivalent to the street talk, but is, well, less problematic, because at the end of the day, it's still not that much different of what, at least as a concept of how a character talks, to what Kids and Mathlab do in Revenge of the Fallen. Thank God that the character is actually likable and endearing on a written role, but that still leaves the way it was handled,
Okay, to give him credit, I compare him more to Eminem than Skids and Mudflap, which, okay, to be fair, Eminem kind of talked like that. The problem with Skids and Mudflap was kind of the ethnic background they seem to be trying to give them with that dialect. Like, the whole gangsta talk is technically a thing, essentially. Now, the problem was they were doing that in the African-American vernacular sense, which, yeah, that was problematic.
I mean, like I said, that's still what the beat comes across to me. I did speculated off commentary with Pedro if one of the things that they did not tell, if it's potentially him and Rhyme's parents were of different ethnicities, which would justify the color of the eyes and the blonde hair, which is not super common in Japan, and that might have been a reason why they felt also ostracized by society. If you see in Blue Eye Samurai, you know that it's kind of a thing that Japan also tends to have. So maybe that would have been the thought process of giving that kind of accent for the English version. I don't know. I just think giving him either a New Yorkese accent like Joey in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or, Surfer Dude kind of attitude would have had the same result without having these connotations. Just saying. Despite this, like I said, plot-wise, I still managed to like Beat nonetheless. I guess those 3 years of development do help. So there is that. You already know everything that you need to know from me about show. So there is that. GOAT, absolute best character. I cannot wait when he actually, becomes God and possibly the ultimate final boss of the franchise.
Coldest twirly take ever.
I know, right?
That's such a cold take because Shiroi's take is in the minority because literally going to the Twain Fest and saying, "Hey guys, I like show," and everybody's like, "Okay, so."
I will say this, however, not about show, but the following. While I'm perfectly fine with what they did to Neku technically as a whole in this game, give me just a second for the details about Coco, but for Neku as a whole, I still don't believe it justifies the changes that they did for the extra portion added for the Switch version of the first game. They could have easily done something like, say, Joshua says to Neku, "You're in great danger," and he just teleports him. Having to be specifically killed, shot by Coco, like that as for the sake of having a dramatic cliffhanger, with the stuff that happens in this game, does not gel well, in my opinion, because there's a clear emotional disconnection. That cliffhanger happens in the most dramatic way possible, but by the time we get to reprise that plot point here, a lot of stuff has happened off screen, and Neku is like, "Nah, we chilled out off screen, we're good, bro." It's like... if anything, it makes me wish there was this time a Japanese exclusive novel that told me what happened in details, because at the very least, I will have a way of saying, yeah, this was actually planned, and we just, talked about it somewhere else. But like this, it just tells me, oh, we were supposed to do things differently, but we had to rewrite things.
Like, Coco's whole shtick is that thing I always roll my eyes at, where a villain goes, "Actually, I was doing something that was altruistic and for the betterment of society." Well, why did you act so villainous then?
Well, again, at least with Suzukichi we did that, but at least we managed to beat his ass, nonetheless. There's the whole thing about catharsis, which connects, because I'm done kind of with the characters, I'm perfectly fine also with how we did mostly the Shinjuku Reapers, basically. But connects to what I was saying also throughout the game, the missed opportunities, all the times where the game not teases, but prepares the table for a boss fight, and nothing really happens about it, or development happens off screen, or things are resolved just talking. Again, it's nothing that is technically breaks the plot. The characters do manage to talk, in order to, make things work. At the end of the day, but it still leaves a lot out of catharsis, a lot of characters that you wish there was, a confrontation with more directly, at the very least, even on a drama role, not necessarily out of spite, like with Canon, you basically break the rule of 3 with the other team leaders, for the sake of, having her being purged by the Noise Insider, which in itself is not a problem, but I think it would have worked better if we fought her first and then cured, the Noise Insider. But again, that has to chalk up to the rewriting and the lack of budget and ostracizing out of a publisher. That's probably a reason that I can think of why we didn't have this other boss fight. I still have to retain what I said also about Kubo. I get that there are plot reasons why it should be untouchable, but at least I wish the battle you're not supposed to win would have been against him, because instead what we get is basically the equivalent of having been built up Galen Disley from 13, but instead of even fighting Bartandalus, instead we get a beast that he controls which is the Brogmass from Metroid Other M. That's the kind of letdown that the end of week 3 technically gave me as a result. I don't know, I just think it could have been also handled better. I'm kind of glad that at the very least the final boss is a more proper imposing form with the Phoenix Cantus instead of, recycling also the Swarm boss you're supposed to lose, because at the very least there's a more majestic, theme to that, and, a good music score to go with. Which also, yes, I might as well just, mention briefly, the music is perfectly fine, much like with the first game. I like the fact that he combined Japanese and English lyrics to a cohesion kind of effect, so there is that. To answer Pedro's question about favorite character, that's actually tough. I would say Rindo, actually. I much like with Neko in the first game, I really have to question where is this character writing when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, because the closest we got is with Roxas in 358 over 2 days, and I argue that only a fraction of this kind of, psychological and emotional development that these characters do have. If this is a sign that even in the future characters in Kingdom Hearts will actually be written with this kind of depth, I hope so at the very least.
Well, if it helps you to remember, Akiko Ishibashi, the writer of this game, as well as A New Day from Final Remix, she's writing Kingdom Hearts 4. So there's that.
Okay, last thing that I want to mention about the characters is that if you pay attention, and even, again, leaving what I said about speculation aside, you can kind of tell that Kubo was a last-minute addition, because the whole being exorcised by the RG and UG kind of has the effect that, you can virtually take him out of the plot and not much will change. It's just a minor bit of rewriting to assign a couple of these roles to someone else, like, say, Shiba was corrupted by the composer, by Haz himself, rather than just, Kubo as an agent. That is not necessary to say a negative thing, but just an observation.
So I'm looking for her resume in Moby Games. Her first role in Square Enix, Akiko Ishibashi, I mean, she was a cutscene designer in Final Fantasy XIII. Cutscene designer. So I don't know what that entails specifically. But she was only one of the scenario writers for Lightning Returns. But again, we have to also consider that she probably had zero creative control over the whole plot as a whole. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to hold that against her. She also was one of the writers for 15. Well, I like 15, so no problem there for me. But she was also one of the writers for the Cydia Duodecim too. And I like that game a lot, so that's fine by me. So she has a good track record, from what I'm saying.
Then. Okay, that's basically it also for the characters. I don't have much more to say about the Shinjuku Reapers, like I said. Shiba as an antagonist is fine, even as someone who turns out to be, more sympathetic towards the end. Susukichi maybe strike a bit, on the skirts of the line, but like I said, it's fine because we get to at least beat the shit out of him, Ayano, I kind of wish the Iguana would use more in gameplay factor, not gonna lie, because it really just sits there doing nothing. Even in the Cantus form would have been more reptile-like, at least would have justified, but no, it's like this more flowery motif. It's like, at that point, why do we even have that? But no, that's it for the characters. I've already mentioned the music. The voice acting, all the new cast, I do like what they did. I did mention that the returning ones do feel like within the original they only a couple of small bursts of, dialogue to mention, because I noticed a couple of times Shaw and Beats VAs particularly, not Neku and Joshua managed to work fine, but Shaw and Beats VAs have a tendency to struggle a bit when having to say long sentences. You can kind of tell a bit of raspiness in the voice. Maybe it's the age, maybe it's because they were not used to voice these characters for longer periods of time. I don't know, but that's one thing that I noticed. But again, I like everyone else in the new cast. I bother to listen to the Japanese voices for comparison, and yeah, pretty much everyone sounds on point, so again, no real faults on there for when it comes to tones. We don't really have a situation like some of the Dissidia games with Kujo and Zidane, for example.
Go on.
Alright, I'm practically almost done, which leaves me with the more contentious part of which no one else has mentioned for their final thoughts, but I do believe it's still worth pointing out to some degree. The localization, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because we talked about it, and second, I kind of hate how discourse for this game in particular for localization is being basically instrumentalized for political reasons instead of looking objectively at the game one way or another. I would say this, with the information that I got, I don't really think it's that disastrous that people have mentioned over time on the internet. But I do have my reservations. The only two cases that I singled out are one about changing completely the structure, which is when we meet the tagger during week 1, the girl with the orange outfit, I forgot her name. If you pay attention, her line of dialogue specifically mentioned that she wants to write a graffiti on 104, on the 104 building as fighting capitalism. That's kind of like how she put it. I forgot the specific terminology. While in the original, it's instead a more personal reason, where she just did not like the graffiti that she was going to write over it. Again, it's technically meaning nothing at the end of the day, but I do believe by the same token, it really feels pointless that you rewrite, a character who just has, a rather perfectly personal reason, especially for a tagger, to employ their art into our fuck the system kind of bit, especially if it wasn't there to begin with. But again, that's not really a big thing. I would argue the second example that I have is instead tone shift, which is the scene where Motoi is actually being erased by Shoka during one of the times Rindo has to time travel. Particularly, one line of threat that is instead expressing disbelief and panic to the situation is basically saying something like, how could this be? Why would she do that? Instead, it's changed to him basically quipping and saying, guess you should feel the Reaper. It goes also in contrast with his actual portrait, which still express kind of panic, but even if you take it as a Spider-Man kind of way of coping with the situation by making a joke, it's not really what the character was expressing. It would be in character threat of saying it. And if the original just had a different kind of joke, it would make sense to, wanting to have a quip. But as it is, that really did not gel well to me. But again, that's literally just two examples. And I think the major problem with this is that we lack a lot of context, when instead people just decide to select a cherry pick specific moment and just point fingers one way or another, which I think that's the biggest problem, which is also the biggest problem with localization as a whole. The people lack context. If we got to know on detail from, not just necessarily from developers themselves, but from people who know what precisely the deal is on a bigger level, on a whole, at the very least we would be able to judge more the capacity of what a translator has done, one way or another. I'm more baffled by the fact that despite all the complaint, no one is actually doing a retranslation patch for the Steam version, because a game that came out, I think, a bit after, Eiyuden Chronicles, that one is getting one. So I don't know why people did not even try to do one for this.
It's important to remember, Teo. It's important to remember, Teo, that the people complaining about are a vocal minority. They're a very vocal minority, but they're a minority nonetheless. Most TWEWY fans, including even the fans who know Japanese and translated the reports, most TWEWY fans are perfectly fine with the localization. It's important to remember this is a vocal minority we're talking about.
There is a noticeable amount of people complaining about the localization who more or less have kind of admitting to grifting on the situation. Not saying that complaints about the localization aren't legit here and there, but I'll admit and this is just me personally, most I've stumbled on personally have more or less come out as basically grifters on the situation. Basically people trying to trigger the issue for more outrage than actually legit wanting to fix it, essentially. That might be part of why there hasn't been a big movement to do it.
Well, I'll be the judge of, what percentage is on what, eventually. But again, to conclude this, because I don't want, like I said, I did not want to dedicate too much space on this, specifically towards Matt, because well, he did not do the work all by himself, but he's still the leader of the team. I get what he's trying to do. He wants to be this generation's Ted Woolsey. He wants to leave a mark on the video game world so that people can remember him and his craft eventually in the future. But the kind of attitude that he goes for, particularly also trying to respond to this kind of behavior, only doesn't really paint him in a good light, in my opinion. When what he did for the NPC dialogues in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth ultimately cements more this kind of behavior to me. Like I said, I still don't really think at the end of the day the job that the translations did with this specific game is to this outrageous, especially considering Pedro made a good argument about that needs to be reflected the streets gang kind of deal, and that doesn't want to be timeless. Sure, in a few years probably I'll still probably cringe at some terminology, but that's the game taking a choice. That doesn't mean I have to like it, but that's the game's choice.
What you said though about lack of transparency, I feel you could honestly apply to like an entire game's development. And honestly, fans would probably be more understanding if they knew what was going behind the scenes on a lot of stuff. But for obvious or sometimes dumb reasons, companies want to clam up as much as possible.
I want to just give one other example because it's something that happened recently. As Pedro noted, starting with the 8th game, thanks to level 5 and Richard Mark Honeywood, Dragon Quest has started to implement a lot of accents for, the games. Deji's other Italian friend, Nald, recently has played through the entirety of Dragon Quest XI, and he told me that he did actually like the accents, but he did notice that almost every single line in the game is virtually expanded to a huge degree because he played it with the Japanese dub, and apparently a lot of the sentences are stretched more, and a lot of references are cut out or replaced with something. And again, the fact that we do not, for example, the context with that outside of minor bits can create a potential problem. We did have an occasion where some extra effort was put into different versions, like with the Judgment games. Although from what I heard, a lot of people did not like that either. So at the end of the day, I don't know what to think at this point. But again, for the purpose of this game, it's fine. Could have been better. It's still not a perfect work and could have been fixed in a couple of places at the very least. But it's not the travesty that the internet wants it to believe. At the same time, I don't think it's, a complete impenetrable thing that, as a result to responding to this criticism, people want it to be. To end it quickly for the final thoughts, like I said, the game is fine. Probably better than the first one if I had to judge the two of them. I was afraid I was going to repeat part of my final thoughts from Kuni and say that I like the gameplay better, but I prefer the story of the first game. But no, I do believe at the end of the day, despite the rewriting, they stick the landing for the most part with this. There is the stuff, I forgot about it. Yeah, the stuff with Shock at the very end. Well, I did only mention briefly. I'm just gonna also be very brief on this. While I get what they were trying to do, I do believe they did a bit of a misstep by not basically caring about what Shoka thinks, for lack of a better term. It's all in service of what Rindo and Yoshua think. Yoshua being a dick, it's perfect in character, so I don't mind that. But I believe if they just had a line of dialogue maybe of Yoshua to say, oh, is that what you really wish? If you really wish to live, saying it to Shoka, then prove it to me, and then he teleports her away. At the very least, we know it would be also in service of Shoka, reflecting her dreams and desires and agency. But as it is, Shoka is instead just given the courtesy of being, put alive again in the RG, but despite the fact that, she's given a life of her own, her actual goal and desires of wanting to be right with Rindo has to be in service of Rindo, and it's treated, with the joke of I try to friend request you, but you ignore them for a month, which in hindsight could have been fixed if she tried to contact, Fred and Nagi, I don't know, and ask them. But again, they wanted clearly to have a joke reflecting social media lightheartedness. So there is that. My point is that it could have been handled better with just a simple tweaking. But again, at the end of the day, these two games are perfectly fine. I still believe that there will be a third game at one point. I don't know when, but again, if Nier could get a game, almost half a decade later, when the first game killed its development studio, I'm pretty sure everything is possible. I'd still clutch, the pearls of the first Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor over these two games, but at least it's nice of Square Enix wanted to have an attempt of making a game that tries to reach there. And who knows, maybe the third game will actually get there, especially because a lot of the characters in this game starts resembling a lot more the characters of Devil Survivor, so who knows, maybe we are actually on an uphill spiral going. Pedro.
For me, I personally really love the game because, again, whatever issues I can potentially find, they're completely pale in comparison to how much the game gets right by providing some strong, valuable messages that feel very relevant. But this game has very cool, current, and valuable things to say. And again, the characters are all fantastic to me, and they all handle their arcs really well. I personally think there's some small details and some small good moments, like the one Shiroi noticed in part 8 of Rindo clearly being undecided that I feel like Tear's not giving credit for. But again, that's neither here nor there. The music is brilliant. The presentation is fantastic. The style is perfectly translated. My only thing about that I want to add when it comes to the localization discussion is to throw Teo a bone. Yeah, never did anyone say that the localization is flawless. My problem is how a lot of people who try to demonstrate the localization being supposedly a complete travesty is how they bring up things out of context. Like, for example, that's when Tatsuya Kondo is possessed by noise. He says, and I quote again, "Is curry made by me, a Japanese, not an Indian, authentic?" To which Matt translated as, "Can I even call this curry, or is it just cultural appropriation?" Even though the phrasing is different, the meaning of what he's saying is still the same. It's just that Japanese people don't use the term cultural appropriation.
It's also worth noting, as we noted, off commentary when I was playing the game, that he's doing that while under possession of the noise, as in a being that is pushing his more extreme negative feeling. So it's not even presented in a good way.
Something some people never seem to consider is also the case where, what if, yes, a change was made in the localization, but it was facilitated by not just the company, but the original writer deeming them wanting it to be different for, say, that different audience?
I can tell you that when it came to the Final Fantasy 16 localization, Koji Fox did consult every change with the original scriptwriter, Maito, and according to Koji Fox, Maito even looked at some of his changes and actually thought, that's actually better than what I got in my script. I'll put that one in mine.
You also remember, Jova, that 16 was made without Western audience in mind to begin with.
Just to continue my point, like I said, my problem is something like this, where they take this cultural appropriation remark and they present it, like if you look up how people bring up this particular line, they present it with zero context, and it's very misleading. So that's an example of how the problem is that a lot of these people, unfortunately, are shit posters who don't properly. And like I've said, the whole later loser swing from Shoka, Matt explained properly what the deal is with that her buy is not a regular buy because it's a specific type of, insulting goodbye, for lack of a better term. That's meant to be because I do think Matt does have a good idea with his overall method of, it's about conveying the say, like, if the line is meant, if the line is meant to be endearing, it should be, as long as it's still endearing in the localization, it's fine. If it's meant to be a dickish line, then it should still be a dickish line as well, even if I technically have to, even if the phrasing is different. So I understand the idea. My problem, of course, is how people but here, to take it something that's more like a change. There's one particular moment where Fred turns to Minamoto, and in the Japanese version he says Minamoto-san, which is typical. Whereas in the English localization they change it to Mr. Minami, my Minaman, which I personally think is a very endearing and perfectly in character thing for Fred to say. Not to mention, remember, one of Fred's things is that he's masking his trauma with his happy-go-lucky attitude. So if anything, this does add to his character arc. This does reinforce what he's doing. So if any, and like I said, my Mina Man, like much like the Rindu thing, yeah, this is exactly something Fred would say. It feels in character. So technically, I don't see this as a problem. Like I said, it's one of those things where people, like I said, I'm not saying the localization is flawless, and don't mistake that. That being said, based on all the examples that I have seen, most of them, not all of them, most of them feel like they're genuinely just trying to pose the idea that everything has to be a literal translation and anything other than that is automatically garbage. That seems to be the mentality I get from a lot of these people. That being said, like I said, I want to emphasize that's not to say that are not legitimate complaints. There cannot be legitimate complaints here and there. Because here's the thing. The original localization of the original game wasn't exactly flawless either. Koji Fox's decisions in the first game were not the best either. Remember, he took away he completely revamped the way Uzuki was written in the first game. Because in the first game, she had meme speak. I'm sure Teo probably liked that change because he doesn't like meme speak.
Well, like I said, it would have been a good excuse for the retranslation of the Switch version. But again, at that point, I do wonder if it would have been a monkey's paw situation, and Matt would have taken the occasion and change the names of the characters in an American way. Say they're all changed to the students. They're going to Japan for studying or something like that in a 4Kids kind of way.
I mean, that would require them changing more so the character than the dialogue.
Hasn't saw Ace Attorney before.
Okay. Ace Attorney is a different case since that was actually how it was from
My
the
point,
start.
Joe, is that the attitude and precedents are there for people to actually act that way.
The reason I don't agree, though, is like your inclination would imply that they would keep the dialogue the same, just changing them coming from a different country, which would kind of defeat the purpose of a retranslation of something that's already been localized.
I don't know what to tell you, but again, I'm just glad a lot of things happened at the end of the day, because, it might have been a case of, yes, things might have been better, but they also could have been worse.
One final example before I move on that I would like to bring up, because to me this one really feels like a stretch if I've ever heard one. When Rendo gives Nagi the pin, the Tomonami pin in week 1, in the day that she joins us. In the Japanese version, she says, "You're giving it to me." Which, again, very straightforward. Whereas in the localization, they say, "You would truly bestow such an incredible gift upon a plebeian wretch like me." Which, again, it's more colorful. The dialogue is more colorful, but it's still conveying the same message. She's still doing, "Oh, you would truly give this to me." It's still the same.
That stems to how Nagi talks in the entire game, which, like I said, goes to the school of thought of Alexander Smith that he did for background story and the subsequent Ivalice games. The kind of verbosity. I know that. I know that one is actually instead an acquired taste because the Unicorn Overlord is translated in a similar manner, and I know that people have issues with that too.
Sure. Personally, I think the Alexander Smith thing it's a good fit for Nagi. Personally, so I don't mind with the whole Thesaurus thing he goes with Nagi. Again, it still fits, and like I said, this particular line, this definitely feels like a stretch.
If it's anything to go by, I had a lot of fun reading her dialogue. So.
Oh yes.
No, it's like the
I like the way she speaks.
Yeah, I like it as well. It gives character, and it's in a way that still feels in line with the original Japanese intent. Like she's meant to be a nerd. And yeah, if there's one of the characters in this game where it makes sense to do the Alexander Smith thing, it would be this one, because she's a big gacha RPG gamer, so nerd. So yeah, her using these ye old terms like RPG characters talk, yeah, makes sense. It's in character. So I don't have a problem with this personally. But yeah, back to this. Now, I love the game. I think it's definitely, it stands as one of the best RPGs in Square Enix's catalog overall, because it does a fantastic job of being great in all fronts. Not flawless in all fronts, but still great in all fronts. To me, this stands very comfortably on par, right alongside games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. I'm not saying it's necessarily as flawless as those games, but again, it's one of those games where I think the overall package is just so incredibly satisfying and so entertaining, especially, like I've said, and I've mentioned this before, but I will mention one more final thing, is if there's one thing Kondo nails with these games is the pacing. Because this game is long, very long, considerably longer than the first game. So you'd think there would be a point where it feels like the story is dragging, you feel like there's not much happening, where the game is spinning its wheels. No. Every single time it feels like the plot might come to a standstill, Kano knows exactly when to drop the next reveal, the next plot bomb, the next plot twist, right on cue to make sure the story maintains momentum. The overall pacing of this game, I will argue, is absolutely fantastic, because even other games, like I can think of other technically better games where the pacing maybe may be a bit off. Like Final Fantasy IX, for example. There are moments in Final Fantasy IX where I do question the pacing a bit, like, the whole card game tournament that Zidane is apparently into, even though he has never mentioned it, just as an excuse to pad out the game with a card game tournament that comes out of nowhere. Stuff like that, it feels like padding for the sake of padding, and if you remove this thing from the story, nothing would be lost. A game like this, for as long as it is, the fact that it manages to maintain such strong pacing where everything feels purposeful and it never feels like the game is spinning its wheels, that's a commendable effort on part of Kondo as a director. He did the same thing in the first game too, but it's even more impressive in this game because this game is like 3 times as long as the first game. And yet, the fact that Kondo manages to maintain narrative momentum for so long without ever feeling like things are going too slow or too fast. No, it always feels just right. And that's a considerably harder thing to pull off than you'd think. So I do commend Kondo for always making sure to... I know this is the easy pickings, but I'm going to mention a bit how much you guys know how much I absolutely detest the pacing of Fair Fence Ref Refrain Chord, on how that game loves to spin its wheels. So I compliment Kondo for managing to go through this entire game without ever falling into that trap, which is so hard to do. Excellent game with strong storytelling, strong characters, important, valuable things to say about current day things like, the commentary on content creators, which is something that only can be done with this particular setting. So the game, that's one of the things that I love about this game in particular. It takes advantage of its time frame, as in the time it came out, and its setting to do things that could only work in this setting and this because obviously commentary on content creators would not be something that would fit in a Final Fantasy game, of course. But this is one of those franchises where it makes sense to have commentary of this kind, because it perfectly fits the setting, right? So I do appreciate. It's kind of like that. Even jokes that make sense in that setting, like for example, like I don't know how to respond to mode type. Oh, that's easy. You just tap the empty bar, stop typing. Again, jokes that can only make sense in this setting. And that's what I think. This is why I think that I agree with Matt Ferda about how this is not meant to be timeless. This is meant to be current, timely, relevant to today's times. And that's exactly what these games are. They're meant to be time capsules. The original game was a time capsule of the late 2000s as well. So this is just something that the Toei games are like. And I love the characters. I love the story. And I just like it's just an incredibly fun game to play. And the fact that this took 14 years, and it really feels like the developers haven't really lost sight of what this franchise stands for. And they did a fantastic job, in my opinion. So, because it's just such an incredibly solid game all around. I personally think, while yeah, you can find them if you look for them, I think the overall product, despite its rewrites, still works all around. Because remember, the first game also had a similar development cycle. The first game also was supposed to be very different before it got changed.
Like I said, this is nothing new for Square as a whole. They've been doing that since the 90s.
Yeah. So, and I think the game survived its development troubles just fine, honestly. It still manages to tell a cohesive, incredibly entertaining story with great characters. And again, the style is great. The music is wonderful. It's just a fantastic game overall. And in my opinion, one of the best current era Square Enix games, without a doubt, because it's abundantly clear that the developers who made this game poured a lot of heart and care into this to make the best possible game they could. And I have to compliment them for that, because again, this was clearly a passion project through and through, remember, they had to fight for the right to make this game. So, and yes, they did a fantastic job, I think, overall. Not a perfect job, but still a fantastic job nonetheless, in my opinion. So yeah, everybody, that was Neo the World Ends With You. I hope you enjoyed this. And that's it. See you for whatever we next playthrough there is. So see you then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until next time.